intelligence. It's not a nice thing that, just that some nice people on the 39th floor, or the 10th floor, or whatever, do to furnish the company's image. But it's really about how we integrate the management of social, political, and environmental impacts into how we operate. I also think it's turning into a process. And I think in talking about sustainability, we're really talking about the transformation of the role of business in society. Business, we know, is a powerful engine for creating prosperity. Certainly capitalism, although not equitable, has lifted a lot of people into very prosperous lives. And so I think for me, sustainability is how do you harness the benefits of that engine, but also deliver as much good to society as possible while being profitable.
Thank you. Derek, what are your thoughts? Okay, I'm going to take this a little bit in a different direction on this topic. My department, I've got about 100 people in my department, and we've actually branded the department in Covanta Sustainable Solutions. And the company is in the waste business, environmental services. And obviously a lot of what we do revolves around the environmental aspect of sustainability. I actually thought a lot about this, and I think where I come out on sustainability is I weigh very heavily on the social aspect of this context, and I put it down into three buckets, and it's about respect, trust, and caring. And when I look at people that are in my department or in my company, and when we're very interactive with our communities, when we're successful, those three things are first and foremost on their plate. That's how they're approaching the problem. That's how they're engaging with people. Where we haven't been successful, and I can tell you a number of times where that has happened, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, those three things were taken for granted. And I think if you have those fundamentals kind of looked after, then the other aspects of the sustainability question and the dynamic around sustainability will pour themselves through quite naturally. So that's my definition.
Great, very interesting. Appreciate that. Thanks. Kevin?
Yes. Sustainability in my line of both academic and when I was in practice is the relationships that we have from moving materials from one place to another. You look at products that are agricultural based. So how is the farmer being taken care of in this transaction? From raw materials through the transport, through the manufacturing process, ultimately to a consumer, and then in rare cases, hopefully through Covantis, where it's now becoming a product that needs to be disposed of. This whole idea of designing something that's socially and environmentally responsible throughout that entire process from end to end, and the relationships between those individuals that are involved in the movement of materials from one place to another is what's important in supply chain. And doing all of that with ethics, social responsibility, environmental protection at the right price that takes care of everybody in that process is what I believe sustainability is all about.
Great. Thanks. Guy, how about you?
I guess I think of it from a perspective of a startup, even though Audible is kind of no longer a startup. It still feels like a startup, and having been there in the startup days, there's kind of an old saying in the startup world: "With the dog, eat the dog food." You have an idea, which is the dog food, and you convince a bunch of investors on the idea, and you hire people, and everybody rallies around this idea of making this dog food. But in the end, will the dog eat the dog food? And sustainability for me is, do you have an idea that finds synergy, finds a role in the marketplace, finds customers? There's a kind of there's something that starts to happen if it actually works. And if it starts to happen, then you build on that. And I feel like in the end, there's sort of a codependency between you as a company and your customers and the folks who are working with you to help build the business and grow it. And so sustainability in a sense is, can you sustain the company at all? Does the company thrive? Does it grow? Does it grow customers? Does it make customers happy? Does it make the employees happy? And, and we'll talk about this in a bit, I think, but because we moved to Newark several years ago, how do you sustain your relationship, both locally as well as with your worldwide customer base?
Great. And maybe just to add to the diversity of definitions too, we've kind of gotten to a place where we think about sustainability, particularly sustainability from a business perspective and what we deliver to our clients, is about managing complexity. If we look at the size of major infrastructure programs around the world and what it takes to deliver on those, these are big, big, complex projects and programs. And trying to harness the best of 45,000 people around the world and bring those to bear for our clients around the world is about managing complexity. And this idea, if we think about, human, social, and political and natural capital, helping our clients advance human progress with less risk. So managing all those to reduce the risk while still, advancing the overall goals of our clients. So a little bit different. Let me take a break there too, just for a second. And we want to start engaging with the audience sooner rather than later. I see we've got 2 mics set up, and I don't want folks to be shy to come up. So please put your hand up, come on up to the mics, and let's start engaging in dialogue right away. One of the things that I think is particularly interesting too, this idea around sustainability and how it weaves in and out of the topic of ethics. I think we had a great start to the day today with Richard Smith, and I think we had a great Q&A as well, which I found particularly interesting. And maybe picking up on that a little bit, let's touch on for a few minutes how ethics fits into our definitions of sustainability. Kevin, why don't we start with you?
Ethics and sustainability through the lens of supply chain. Very complex. It's different in multiple sectors. You have supply chains that are in the corporate sector, in the healthcare, higher education. You have government supply chains. So this is not limited to just business when we think of business as corporations. But the ethics part and how you're doing and conducting yourself in those processes of integrating this concept of both social, environmental, sustainability into those transactions. Are we writing contracts in a sense that, are we getting the materials that we want, the services that we want, but can we also do that in a way that protects the people that are involved in that process? The economic development that results in good, ethical, sustainable supply chains is a key. We're all into the business to make, obviously, money and hit that bottom line, but can we integrate this idea of how are the people being treated who are making the materials and the products that we ultimately enjoy on a day-to-day basis? And then the people who are making the decisions about who we're going to contract with. When you think about supply chains, and any product that you can think of, and you start to look at all the different pieces and parts and all the different suppliers that are involved in bringing something together to make that item that ultimately is sold, you have to think about the people and the workers and all those factories and all those different manufacturing plants that brought all that together to come to you. And if ethics is done right, then obviously all the workers and all the folks are treated properly and they're paid a living wage throughout that entire process, and that product is priced right, and folks are enjoying the ultimate end, which is that consumable item. But ethics is really difficult to also try to trace through that web. But a good company has standards that have reports about how that product came to be and whether or not the individuals involved in that process were taken care of. So ethics as part of a contract between the entity that's receiving the goods and all the players that are within that process is critical.
Thanks. Derek, any thoughts on that?
Like I said, having been in the waste business, which I think most of you would recognize as a potential area that has been widely publicized as maybe not being so ethical. It is quite interesting, so whoever wants to sit with me at lunch, I can share some stories. You know,
Should we finish Sopranos? Is that?
well, you know, from time to time, there are little gray areas. Ultimately, the only way we're going to succeed with big infrastructure projects today. Doesn't matter if it's in the waste business or whether you're building bridges, whether you're building tunnels, there are impacts to it. And in order for you to get that work done, and society needs this work done, you have to be very open and honest and transparent about what you're trying to accomplish. And you have to be willing to engage. So, you know, there's not a big handbook on ethics within our company. There is a small one on policy and procedure and what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. But we spend a lot of time asking ourselves, well, if we're on the other side of the table, or if we're in the public, how would we interpret this coming down at us? What would we say? What would we do? And you spend a lot of time thinking through those steps and saying, okay, they have a valid concern. How do we mitigate it? How do we correct it? How do we move to make sure that we all understand the impacts of what we're trying to accomplish? So it's like I said, you know, the waste business, I've been fingerprinted in a couple of states to get a license to do business. I've had my personal bank records taken by government agencies to scroll through. So I'm very transparent. You know, there's more information on me out there within some of these political and regulatory agencies that I care to even think about. It makes me nervous at times with security breaches. But, you know, ethics is just something that you cannot question in big infrastructure businesses today. You either have your head and your heart wrapped around it in the right way, or you should not be doing it.
You know, you just reminded me as well, particularly being here in Newark, which I think is a great place, great location. But we think about sometimes in past history where the transparency wasn't there. I think the siting of UMDNJ here in Newark and some of the resulting problems that came out of that because it wasn't transparent and didn't include discussions with the community. And making those types of decisions in a non-transparent way that doesn't engage a community is not sustainable. I also come back to, and many times when I'm talking particularly to folks recently joined the company, that it's not just about what you do and what you get done, but it's about as much about how you do it.